If you know somebody is in the same boat that you've been in before of uncertainty, whether it be, being traded or who knows what. I just feel like we're all human and we're all sort of in the same boat in that way because we're moms. Like at the very basic level, we're moms and we're humans. And so, it's one of the things that I love about the team that we're on right now is that it's been nice to just sort of get to know people on that level as well and just be human and have those like, hey, how are you doing? Can I do anything? Or, have those discussions every once in a while about like someone's brought up to me, oh, the deadline's coming up. And this has been such a fun team. I love that conversations are starting to happen like that between coaches' wives and players' wives more often than they used to, because we've all been there.
You're listening to Breaking the Ice, a podcast and community created for wives and girlfriends of professional hockey players, but since has turned into so much more. Stories shared by women around the globe who come together for a sense of connection and community. You may be in the sports industry, a hockey parent, an athlete, or a person who just enjoys podcasts, but I can promise you'll be inspired by these women every single day, while we evolve through the tips, tricks, do's, and don'ts for all things hockey. And guess what? So much more. For women, by women, but especially for a hockey community. So lace them up and tune in for a new episode every Wednesday. Thanks for listening. Hello. Welcome back to the podcast. Happy you're here today. I just got back from Italy. We were there for about 5 days. And now I feel like I have a vacation hangover. You guys know what that feels like when you go out of town and you kind of just eat whatever you want, and then you come back and you have like ample laundry and everything's just a mess and unorganized. That's kind of where I'm at today. And my husband had to get to the hospital this morning at 6:30 for his shoulder surgery. So now that I look at it, I feel like it's maybe not the best timing to come back the day before a surgery after vacation, because I'm so tired, you guys, and I'm chasing my 1-year-old around. But the good news is he's now into all the toys he was sick of before we left for vacation. So now hopefully that will last me for the next couple weeks before we fly home back to the States. So I wanted to do an episode not this week, but next week on traveling with kids. Whether you guys play in North America or you play in Europe, this is just going to be beneficial. Whether you're flying a few hours or you're flying 10 hours, we're going to really just get into the nitty-gritty of how to tackle, survive, and just get through it. I have like a lot of anxiety about flying home in a few weeks with my 1-year-old because he's just so busy, and like he's kind of at that age where he gets bored and he gets frustrated and he's like kind of starting to throw tantrums and stuff. So I will say, like, when I was really nervous about flying with him when he was like 6 months and under, but it was still a breeze at that point looking back, and he pretty much slept most of the time for any flights 6 months and under. Once you get over that mark, it's definitely a lot more challenging. So you will have to tune in next week as we're going to have a really in-depth convo about this, which I'm super excited to have. This week on the podcast, I have Erin Hakstol joining me, and Erin's husband, Dave, is the head coach in Seattle in the NHL. So this is the first year that Seattle has been in the NHL. So this is their first year spending their time there, as they also have 2 kids who are older now. So Erin splits her time between back home and in Seattle because her kids are obviously in school, and that's a priority for their family. So we get into a lot of different topics, and speaking of her kids and this hockey lifestyle, I just thought this was really interesting because her kids are older and they've obviously been doing this moving grind for several years. And we talk about how her and her husband frame this experience to their children and really truly believe that within themselves, of turning maybe a stressful situation into a positive and exciting adventure for their children. We also talk about what some of the challenges are of having kids in this lifestyle, whether that's younger or older, because obviously she's been in it through it all. We also talk about starting over in new cities with your family and how to keep your mindset right, what some of the difficult things that she experienced and some of the highlights as well. We also get into what community means to Erinn and how this time in the hockey world has shaped who she is today. We talk about a lot more, but you'll have to listen to hear about it. I really find a lot of inspiration from women who have been in this lifestyle for such a long time. I feel like I really look up to women who have so much grace, and I feel like these women can teach us so much about how to frame our perspectives and shape our perspectives, because obviously like it's not easy. And I think that on this podcast and on the Instagram page, like I really try to normalize the struggles of it, but I think sometimes there's learning lessons through those struggles, and just listening to Erin's story and other women in this lifestyle, it's just really important, and I think you can learn a lot from it. So enjoy this episode. Well, welcome to the podcast, Erinn. I am happy that we found the time to connect between my crazy playoff schedule and your busy schedule. I'm super excited that you're here.
Thank you for having me. It is a hot miracle that we found a time. I agree.
Yes. Okay. So as you know, I always like guests to give kind of a rundown of who you are, where you're from, and all of that good stuff. So
all right. Well, grew up in Minnesota. I was northern Minnesota, actually. I was a figure skater growing up. And so skating and being on the ice isn't very foreign for me. Dave and I did not meet until after college. Dave is the head coach of the Seattle Kraken currently. And he went to the University of North Dakota. I also went to the University of North Dakota, but I always tell people that I went there 8 years after he did. So we didn't meet until after he was done playing hockey. He was already an assistant coach.
Okay.
Which was, yeah. So I was not a player's wife ever, just dove right into the coaching life.
Okay, amazing. And you guys have how many kids?
We have 2 children. Avery is 16 and Brendan is 13. So Avery's an 11th grader. Brendan's an 8th grader.
Okay. And I will talk about this down the road, but I'm super excited to talk to you about having kids in this lifestyle, because obviously you've been in it for a long time and your kids are older now. So I think it gives such an interesting kind of spin for people that are going to be in this lifestyle for a long time as well. I actually looked up your husband on Elite Prospects because I always like to get like an idea of where you guys have been and whatnot. And I saw that he went to University of North Dakota and then he was the head coach there. Was that like kind of a cool full circle moment for him?
It was, for sure. It was one of his greatest honors, like at the time, for sure, is to be a head coach there. And he was there quite a long time in hockey years. He played at North Dakota. My dad played at North Dakota. My brother-in-law played at North Dakota.
So you're big fans.
We were big fans. Well, growing up in the area, we didn't have much of a choice. Our parents were like, this is who you cheer for.
Yeah,
but that's
exactly.
okay. It's okay. It was fun. And Grand Forks, where the University of North Dakota is cold. There's not a ton else to do in the winter, and they pack Ralph Engelstad Arena for every single home game to the rafters. So it's a really fun atmosphere. He really enjoyed his time here, and it was a big decision to leave when we left.
You got to spill the tea. How did you guys meet, being 8 years younger than him?
Yeah, it's actually sort of a funny story. It's kind of a northern Minnesota story. I had some friends on a lake about 10 minutes from where my parents' lake cabin was. I was young. I was like 24 when we met, and my parents were having a cocktail party at their house that I was helping them get ready for, but it was a gorgeous day on the lake, and we were water skiers. I grown up on the lake. And so I called my friends and I said, hey, I'm done helping my parents. Do you guys want to come over and go out on the lake? And they're like, sure. Can we bring our friend? So they brought Dave with. I had no idea who he was. I hadn't heard of him before in my life. I'd lived out of the area for a couple years. So I wasn't living in the fan base area of UND. We went out on the lake and our friend, he kind of signaled to me that he wanted to play a joke on Dave. And Dave grew up in Alberta. He did not grow up on lakes. He did not grow up water skiing. And our common friend in common did. And he said, let's have a contest. Let's bet a beer on who's the better skier. And I was like, okay. He goes, Erin, you go last since you never ski. I said, okay, I'll go last. And so our friend went first and he's an awesome skier. Dave went second. He kind of, he was going to kill me for my honesty, but he kind of wobbled up and it wasn't a very athletic look for a bit. And then he kind of got better as it went, but it was far from perfect.
That's
but
okay. We can't all be great at everything, right?
He was trying really hard. And then I said, well, why don't you give me the other ski? I think I need 2 skis. And so I sort of pretended to wobble up on 2 skis and went with that joke for about a minute. And then I let the other ski go and then slalom back and forth. And I could just see him in the boat, like shaking his head and kind of laughing and the rest is sort of history. We sort of kept in touch by email for maybe 6 weeks or so. Like it became a really busy time for him. And if I'm being honest, I was in such a great place. I had a great job. It's the job I wanted. I was commuting from our lake house to work every day, like a 40-minute drive into town and loving life. And I kind of was like, I kind of want to be single for a bit. And then I met Dave and that was it.
You know what? It's so funny what they say when you're not looking for someone and you're at that point where you're just like the happiest and most fulfilled. That's when the right person comes in.
It's 1,000% true. Like I'm a firm believer in it. It's so funny that you'd say that because I actually just had that conversation with our 16-year-old and we weren't really referencing anything related to her. She doesn't have a boyfriend right now, but we were just talking about relationships. And I said that to her and she was like, oh, Mom, that's so cliche. Like that's just a movie thing. And I said, no, I think it's actually the truth. I think that's really true. I said, some people find that early and some people find it late, but when you know, you know.
For sure. And she can listen back to this podcast and you'll be like, look, she said it too. You know, it's just a thing.
You can bet she'll be listening to this podcast.
Yes.
She'll be thinking, what did she say about me?
So what were you doing for work?
I was working for an advertising agency, sort of I was totally on the account side. I was really, it was one of my first like big girl jobs. Out of college, I was a flight attendant with my 2 roommates for a year.
Oh my gosh, that is so fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. And then I worked for the advertising agency and it's kind of a regional agency that has at the time, I want to say 4 offices between Minnesota and North Dakota. So yeah, it was good. It was fun. Advertising agencies are so fun to work at.
Okay. So then you guys were communicating over email, you were having this amazing job, you were just very content with your life. And then what ultimately led you to be like, okay, I'm going to give this guy a chance?
Well, he asked me out. We met maybe in August. He asked me out in October, kind of after the season was off to a start. In college, it's so busy. Like once kids hit campus for hockey, it gets really busy until kind of you get into the swing of the season. And so, which I wouldn't have really known at the time, but I was kind of busy loving my life too. So it didn't matter. But he asked me out and I was working in Fargo, which was about 70 miles away. And he said, do you want to come up and go to dinner? So it was during the week. And I said, sure, let's do it. And my sister was going to law school at University of North Dakota at the time. And I called her and I said, can I stay at your house? I'm going to come up. She was like, well, what are you doing? I said, I'm going on a date. She said, with who? And I said, his name is Dave Hakstol. And she said, oh my gosh, Erin, do you know how old he is? And I was like, no, it hadn't occurred to me at all. Like it literally hadn't occurred to me when I met him. I thought he was like my age. I didn't think about it. I said, well, how old is he? And then I was worried. And she was like, I don't know. It's got to be 8 years or so.
That is so funny. Oh
But,
man.
when you're younger, you're like, oh, wait a minute, 8 years? Is that too much? But
Yeah, you're like, is this a red flag or is this
yeah. So we dated for probably like a year and a couple months, and we got engaged, and then we got married. We got engaged in December. We got married in August of 2003.
Okay. And then
So
you slipped into the head coach's wife role at North Dakota. So how was that for you? I feel like it is kind of a different dynamic than when like pro hockey, obviously, because most of the players are a lot younger.
mhm.
Being from that area, did you find that you were kind of just living your normal life, kind of coexisting with that role?
Yeah, I had kind of a grace period because there was 1 year when we got married, he was an assistant coach.
Okay.
And then the next summer, the head coach came to us. We just dug for our house that we were building. And he came over and let us know that he had taken a job in the NHL with Columbus and that he was leaving. And so, of course, like you have a period of time where you're like, oh my God, are we leaving? Like, what are we doing? Should we stop building the house? Like, what's happening here? But Dave got the job, and yeah, it was kind of organic, I want to say. Like, the people here are so great. Like, it's such a nice Midwestern area, and they want you to do well. Like, they want you to succeed. They want their team to win. That's for sure. But yeah, we just kind of slipped into it, I guess. And I think you just take things as they come, no matter what level you're at or what it is you're doing. And I think that's probably how I can best describe what we did then.
So you guys were there for quite a while, and then
Mm-hmm.
he wound up going to coach in the NHL, which is
Mm-hmm.
amazing. Like what an
Yeah.
amazing milestone for him. So
Yeah,
what was that like really your first time making a big move?
it was. I laugh like looking back on it because I think I turned, I think I turned 40. I must have turned 39. I didn't really move. I laugh because I didn't really move away from home really until that time. And so it was more, I don't know if it was a bigger move for my family or for us, to be away from the area. But we were ready for it at the time. I think it was like good. We weren't really looking to move when Dave got the opportunity, but looking back on it, it was like the right thing to do. Like
Yeah.
it just felt right.
Do you find that it's harder to make friends like as you get older? Because I find that just moving sometimes, even like not related to hockey, but just even like in our where we live in the off season, like it's kind of hard to make friends as an adult when you haven't grown up with these people, you know?
Yes. And I would say that kids make all the difference. Like when your kids are younger, maybe for you guys, like I know you have a really young
Yeah, I
son,
have a
right?
1 year old. Yeah.
1 year old. Yeah. So you're coming into the years where it'll become a little bit easier, I think, in my opinion. Um, your kids start to, I want to say when we moved to Philadelphia, our friends became the parents of kids on our kids' activity, hockey teams, and
Yeah.
the school, like the kids went to in Philadelphia. Well, it was actually New Jersey. We lived on the New Jersey side. It was a like I can't say enough good things about the school there, and it wasn't very big, and so you kind of got to know everybody, and that's where my friends came from, and also in all honesty, like the team. That's I still keep in touch with people from the time that we were there.
Even growing up, I remember like my parents were always hanging out with my friends' parents, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you just naturally like are attending the same events and school functions and stuff. And then you wind up hitting it off with certain people.
Yep. That's totally true. But I think you're right. As my kids get older, it gets a little bit different because I don't know. I think because you drop them off and you're not like sitting there at practice because they're not so little that you have to anymore. And, they're our 16-year-old. It'll be a total game changer this summer. She'll be back. She has her license now. So this will be the first summer that she can just go places on her own. So, it kind of becomes a different phase. Yeah, I know. It kind of becomes a different phase of life, I feel like. And we spend our summers in this area still. So we have really, we have friends that we've kind of grown up with and the kids grew up together. But, if we were other places, I agree, you'd have to like really get out of your comfort zone and depending on who you are and just kind of like find your people.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like this perfectly leads me into something that I wanted to talk to you about, which is obviously raising kids and being a mom in the hockey world. And will you just tell me a little bit about what your journey into motherhood looked like?
Yeah. So actually I stayed working until right before I had Avery, our oldest. And at that time I was working for the university. After the advertising agency, I was offered a job at the university at the foundation in basically like planning all of their events, homecoming, pregame parties, alumni get-togethers. It was an awesome, really fun job and I loved it. But it was days, nights, weekends, whenever something came up. And that's also sort of that is how Dave's job was. So I left that job when Avery was born, just because I thought, I don't know how we would do this. Like, I can't wrap my head around doing this job and also, Dave staying in coaching. So I became full-time mom at that point. And it was the right thing for our family and I loved it. And it has been a full-time job, since then, just because Dave has gone so much. When he was with UND, it was either coaching or on the road recruiting. And then since we've been in the NHL, their schedules are busy and gone. And it's been a privilege to be able to stay home and get our kids to where they needed to go and make sure they have what they need and be there to do homework and all of that. So, but I will say that it's not always easy. I find myself sort of wishing that I could use my brain for other things other than momming once in a while, so to speak.
Totally.
But I've been really lucky with the NHL organizations that we've been a part of for the most part, that there's been a nice balance in that their philanthropy, like the philanthropy arms of their organizations, have provided opportunities to get involved. And that's been a really nice outlet, just in terms of doing something outside of the sort of
right, talking
middle
to
of the season,
other
mom things. But for sure, being a mom has been my hardest job, like hands down. And some days it's like you have great victories, and some days it's like you're trudging through mud, and it's like the hardest days ever. And the moves are, not always easy, but overall, we decided when we left North Dakota for Philadelphia that it provided our kids moving. We knew moving then would probably lead us to having a couple moves with the kids before they moved out of the house permanently as adults. And we just decided right off the bat that for us, we thought it provided the kids more positive experiences and life experiences that they wouldn't get otherwise. than if we stayed. So we kind of have approached our moves like that. And it, for the most part, that's totally been true. Like, I can honestly say it hasn't. There are times, like we moved to Canada for a bit. Dave was with them with the Maple Leafs, and the move to Canada was really hard for the kids. Really, really hard.
How so?
Well, because they had been going to the school in the US, and in Ontario, I'm not sure if it's a Canadian wide thing, but for sure in Ontario, schools go by birth, school grades go by birth year. And so the schools that the kids were going to insisted that both kids move up a grade. So our son was supposed to be a 5th grader. Our daughter was supposed to be an 8th grader. So our son went from 4th grade to 6th grade in a new country. And our daughter went from 7th grade to 9th grade in a high school in a new country.
Oh my gosh. Which that's a really big difference. I mean, if you think about, because I'm American too, even just the maturity level from 7th grade to 9th grade is huge.
Yes. And so I didn't worry about it so much with our son because it didn't seem like such a huge jump. They reassured me that academically they would be pretty much in line, and that at the beginning of the school year, they review so much that they would catch any, deficiencies that might be there. But with our daughter, we kind of thought, well, this is, we moved here and this is what they really want. They're insisting on it. And she's she's always been a mature kid. She's always gotten good grades. So it's just another challenge, and we'll take things as they come and go with the flow. But it was a big jump. It was, even for a kid who's mature, 7th grade to 9th grade was a big jump. And I would say that I've never worked so hard as a parent as I did in Toronto, for sure, because of the school situation.
Yeah. And I'm sure like being away from your family, in your comfort zone and your kind of safe space, so to speak, where you grew up.
Yeah, for sure.
Like just not having that support would have been really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. But the kids, they're resilient, and they're pretty positive. Academically, it was completely fine, but socially it was different. Yeah. And I mean, the experience of living in Toronto was amazing. Like, outside of the school experience, like everything else it was really, really fun to live there. But that was the COVID year.
Oh, okay. So this was like kind of like recently then, like within the last few years.
Yes. Yep. 1920, I think. Okay. Yeah. Dave, we left Philadelphia in like spring of 19. And then we moved to Toronto that fall in August.
How did COVID look like for you guys as a family?
I want to say that Toronto was sort of on the same trajectory as New York City, as far as like when it hit and the waves and everything. And so we sort of were, I want to say, sort of at the, it felt like we were kind of at the beginning. And it was just, the team right away had put some rules in place for our family, and we were completely on board with it, just because we just didn't know what was going on. And school had been canceled for 3 weeks. The NHL season paused all on the same day. And, they were asking us not to go anywhere, get things delivered, don't answer the door when the delivery comes. Just at that time, nobody knew how to handle it. Right. So having 2 teenagers in that situation in early March in Toronto, where it was not always that nice outside, it was a little daunting. But yeah, things hadn't it hadn't hit in the Midwest yet. And so after a bit, we came back to our house here, and the schools here announced that they were fully going online for the rest of the year, and that they were completely prepared for it. Everyone was going to get a Chromebook. They had a system for pickup of all of that. And so we put our kids in school right away here because they weren't in school online yet in Ontario. And we didn't know when they would go back. And the schools here said, yep, we can do it. So we did that. And then we've never been back to Toronto because I'm American and the kids are dual, but did not have passports yet for Canada.
Oh, yeah. And that whole situation, what a mess.
It was a mess. We didn't see Dave for over 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That is awful. You should be able and allowed in these kind of situations to go in and out. I understand what they were trying to do, but to separate families is just not right.
In hindsight, I'm not positive, but I think if we would have asked, the team would have helped us figure that out. But right before COVID hit, when we were living in Toronto, our daughter had just been accepted at Shattuck St. Mary's, which is a prep school. She plays hockey in southern Minnesota to go to high school there, which is something she really, really wanted. So we knew she was going to be starting school in Minnesota. Dave was home until the week of Thanksgiving. So our kids had already started school here. In all honesty, when he left for Toronto, I didn't really think it would be 6 months. We thought, things are going to get better. We'll figure out a way to be able to see each other. And it just didn't ever happen.
Wasn't it like 6 days to flatten the curve or whatever the heck it was? It's like, oh my gosh, look at us guys 2 years later and we're still doing this. Yeah. So you were essentially like solo parenting for 6 months with 2 teenagers.
Yep. I was.
Okay. Hats off to you.
In saying that, I know. Thanks. But I feel like so many other people did that. And so many people still do that to some degree. When you have kids, you just have to make it work. Like whatever
survival mode.
It is. And that's what was best for our kids at the time. And we didn't really have a choice. And we're in a stage now where they come first. Like it's just how it is. And their education is important to us and it's important to them. And so because of that, we just kind of, that's the stage of life. That's the phase we're in right now. So
this episode of Breaking the Ice is sponsored by Athletic Greens. I've been starting to use Athletic Greens first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, and I started taking it because I felt like I didn't really have enough energy throughout the day because I'm usually chasing around a busy 1-year-old. So with 1 scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help start your day off right. These ingredients support your gut health, your immune system, your energy, focus, all the things, and is recommended by professional athletes and only costs you $3 per day. So right now it's your time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day, and that's it. There's no need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase, which is obviously huge for all of us that are traveling and traveling home. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/breakingtheice. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/breakingtheice to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. For sure. I think I've tried to change my perspective on things. Like on days that I'm feeling really overwhelmed, I try to tell myself like, I'm really lucky to be able to be home with my son all the time, because obviously there's a lot of situations just in the US where even if some moms wanted to, they really don't have a choice and they have to go to work. So I try to be like, this is hockey is short-lived, right? And these are memories I will not get back. And just to try to focus on that, because but that's not to say that you're not allowed to like have hard days and complain and go through phases where it's really tough too.
Oh my gosh, for sure. And and everybody does in this field of work. And you're totally right. Perception is everything. And on those hard days, I find like that's the thing that gets me like turned around. That can turn around my day in 2 seconds. When I look at whatever it is that seems like a challenge, when I look at it from a different perspective, or just like I've said a million times already, just take it one thing at a time. So, and I was lucky here when in that COVID year, my family is here. I have an aunt who's like a mother. And my parents, my, my parents are kind of done with the bad weather. So they go to Florida during the winter, but they do come back if I need help.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, if they can, I would do the same thing.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
I think
Yes.
I was actually just talking to my husband about this with everything with COVID. I was just thinking like, it's crazy because even moms that have like that are out like working a job 9 to 5, and then the kids had to go to like online learning, and the moms are
Yeah.
just expected to just drop their job and work from home and somehow manage to homeschool or keep their kids in front of the computer to learn. Like, it's just mind blowing to me. And also like from full-time mom perspective, it's like your kids are normally in school all the time. So that's your time to like get stuff done and,
Mm-hmm.
have your you time and to refuel for the day, and then to just have your kids at home all the time. That would just be so hard. And again, like obviously
For
it's
sure.
a blessing, but it's also, I can definitely see the challenges of that. I just like couldn't wrap my mind around like how kind of unfair that seemed though, to have with just that conversation with my husband
Yeah.
about, moms are just expected to pick up the pieces when, things go
Yeah.
south.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. Dave texted me a couple days ago. It might have been yesterday. And he said, I think he said something like, it was something like, I know that you're already the handyman and the gardener and the the cook and whatever. He's like, would you mind being the tax person and get our stuff over to the accountant? And I laughed when I read it because he listed off maybe 10 different titles. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, that's me.
A woman that wears
I
many
do all
hats.
that. Yeah, I do all that. Pat
Okay, so
myself on the back for a sec.
you guys are now in Seattle.
Hmm.
Tell me about how that has been for you.
I have to say, I was so happy for Dave when he got that job. He has had his eye on it for a couple years or a year or so, and everything, kind of got slowed down by COVID. And um, the people there are so great. The organization is awesome to work with. And the games are so much fun. The fans have a great time. Um, and it's a really conscientious place for Dave to work, but also for me to live. I'm there part-time because of our eighth grader. We couldn't move him this year. I think if we would have told him he was moving again this year, it would have been a tough pill for him. Just this was a good time for him just to stay in one spot for this year.
Yeah.
But when we are there, which I get there at least a couple times a month, I enjoy it so much. And there's so much energy about the team. And it's been a huge challenge, just because it's the first year that they're playing, but it's been really fun to be a part of it. It's really been a privilege to be a part of.
What does long distance look like after you've been married for so many years? Is it just easy peasy?
I don't know that it's easy because, nothing's easy it's easier when you're together, and we actually enjoy each other. So, so, so I do. I mean, how that plays out a little bit during the season, where sometimes they're home for a long time and you're like, okay, well, when are you going on the road?
Yes, yes.
But there's none of that, obviously. And it's just, I don't know, it makes the time we're together more fun. It creates more quality, I would say, probably. We have a lot of FaceTiming, and because the four of us are in 3 different places with our daughter at prep school, and Dave in Seattle, and then Brendan and I here in Grand Forks. There are dinners on FaceTime. There are family discussions on FaceTime.
Yes.
There are a lot of group chats via text. But for Dave and I don't know. We just kind of stick to our foundations and of marriage, and we try to have a little fun with each other along the way in our communication, and then when we're together, it's even better. I think it's been easier this year to be apart. I think between he and I being apart, I think it's been easier because I know how it goes, and I'm confident that it's going to be fine. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I really don't want it. Yeah. I don't want to do it forever. But the fact that we had to, we were forced to do it, that COVID season, I guess it was last year. I think it's made it a little bit easier for us. I don't think it's easier on our son. I think he sort of misses that every day. I think they both miss each other.
Oh, that's so hard.
But it is, but we've done a pretty good job of getting him out there anytime we can between his school and hockey. And you just got to make the best of it,
Yeah. I more so meant easy in the sense where you feel like you kind of know what's coming in a sense. Like
yes.
you pretty much answered that, because I remember when I did long distance, it was fairly newer in our relationship, maybe a year or two after we were dating. And I remember just being so just anxious all the time. Not that I thought anything bad was happening, but I just was so with all the uncertainty, it just kind of made you feel a little bit on edge. So I was just meaning after you've been married for so long, it's kind of okay, we got this. We're good. We can do this. We can get through this.
For sure. That's definitely. And it's funny, but you kind of catch yourself thinking, oh my gosh, do people think what are they doing? But it's sort of, you know what I mean?
No, you got to do what works.
It's you got to do what works. And who cares? I mean, who really cares what other people think?
Totally. I know. So, it's easy to get into that kind of rabbit hole though, of thinking that and wondering that. But at the end of the day, you obviously are making a decision of what's best for your family in this moment, and people can think what they want, but that's what's best for you guys. So I think that's
for
perfect.
Sure.
Yeah. And that's, very selfless to do that too. And that's amazing. So again, it's kind of packing up. You're there half the season. So I'm assuming since you aren't there full time, you really just spend your time spending time with your husband, going to hockey games, and then you fly back and you have school. So is that kind of what it looks like for you?
It is to some degree. I see so much hockey between our daughter and our son and Dave, and because he's on the West Coast and we're in Central Time, his games don't even start till 9:00.
Oh gosh.
So
that's late.
I know. So it's late. Yeah. So, I feel like I'm tired a lot, but, I've traveled more this year than any other time in my life. Maybe even when I was a flight attendant, if I'm being honest. I'll do things if they're playing in Winnipeg, if the Kraken are playing in Winnipeg, which is 2 hours from where we are, we will, on a Thursday drive up there, see Dave for dinner. Sometimes we go when there's a game, sometimes we don't, because it's more quality time if they don't have a game.
Yeah.
To be honest. And so, but then drive back the same night, get home at midnight, and then the next day drive to Minneapolis to see our daughter's game, stay a night, drive back to Grand Forks. I mean, that's 10 hours of driving. And then fly to Seattle on a Tuesday or something. It's a crazy schedule, but I say, people ask me all the time, and it's a hustle, I say, but everyone in the family is happy. And that makes me feel like I'm doing I'm doing my job. That's, that's sort of the stage I'm at. And that's how I feel. And thank God that I can travel. Thank God I can travel.
So as a coach's wife, do you feel like you have kind of more stability than a player, or do you still experience that anxiety and nervousness after each season of what's next for us? Are we going to stay here? Are we going to go somewhere new? That grind.
Right. Yeah. So it's funny that you'd bring that up because I think it touches a little bit on sort of a philosophy that Dave has that I sort of share, where players and coaches are kind of, honestly, as a team, you're sort of in it together. Like you're winning and you're losing, and how your team comes together in the end is like this perfect dance of all of it. Right. And we've been fortunate with the GMs that we've worked with that, I think we've always kind of known where we've stood. Like they've been people that are honest and, really good at communicating. They're still our friends. So that's nice too. But there are times, I want to say, and in all honesty, when Dave got fired at Philadelphia, it wasn't something that we necessarily agreed with, but you could something was going to happen. It was either going to go one way or the other. And you kind of get to a point as a spouse where you're like, all right, let's just what are we doing here? Where are we going? What's happening? And the best thing you can do is just kind of like be the sounding board and be the support and take things as they come and figure it out from there. And that's what we did in Philly. That's, I guess, the only time you've been fired. Going back to relating that to kids, when he got fired in Philly, I had to go run to one of Brendan's classmates' houses. He was in third grade, I want to say. And I had to like pull him out of a birthday party and bring him into the car and bring him home to tell him that his dad got fired. And you know what I mean? Like, it's just this, when things like that happen, you have to figure it out for the kids. You have to figure it out right away. And I feel like once the kids are settled, then I said to Brendan, do you want to go back to the birthday party or do you want to stay home? Dad will be home soon. And he was like, oh no, I'll go back to the birthday party.
I'm good. I'll go back.
Yeah. Their kids are so resilient. But our daughter was a fifth grader. She was a seventh grader. And that was, she was a little more embedded there. So that was harder for her. But I always think about it when I meet the players' wives or girlfriends, the players that have children, because there's a significant amount that do have kids in school. And it's like, oh my gosh, if somebody is in the same boat that you've been in before of uncertainty, whether it be, being traded or who knows what, I just feel like we're all human and we're all sort of in the same boat in that way because we're moms. Like at the very basic level, we're moms and we're humans. And so, it's one of the things that I love about the team that we're on right now is that it's been nice to just sort of get to know people on that level as well. And just be human and have those like, hey, how are you doing? Can I do anything? Or, have those discussions every once in a while about like, oh, the trade, someone's brought up to me, oh, the trade deadline's coming up. And this has been such a fun team. I love that conversations are starting to happen like that between coaches' wives and players' wives more often than they used to, because we've all been there and we're all, in Seattle, for example, we're all new there this year. So it's just been a really solid group to be a part of, especially this year. But I've had that in other places as well. And I don't think it's always been that way, but I think things maybe are heading in that direction. And I think it's great. I think it's a good thing. We can't be like best friends out all the time together.
Totally.
There's definitely a line. Just to be human, compassionate.
Totally.
Is a good thing.
No, I love that. I mean, at the end of the day, we are all humans. And I think being a mom in this lifestyle is really hard. And, people don't always see that, I guess. Like, I don't know. I feel like when I look back at before I was a mom, I had really no idea what everything that moms in this lifestyle were doing. Like, I just kind of thought like, oh, they're amazing. Like, wow, like they've got this covered, but being a mom is really hard. The guys are gone a lot, you're with your kids, solo parenting a lot of the time. Some people are like you're long distance right now and really solo parenting majority of the time. So it's hard. And I think too, with what you were saying about having your kids in school and, them being a little bit older and being able to understand, I think there's like a fear almost of kind of breaking your kid's heart with saying you have to move again.
Yeah. When we first moved from Grand Forks, I had to laugh because I listened again, as I mentioned, to Wendy Tippett's episode that you did with her. I had to laugh when she talked about when they first told their kids that they were moving when they were younger, because she used the same exact expression that we did with our kids. We told them, over FaceTime, because Dave was already in Philadelphia the night before for a press conference. It was like super secret. We couldn't tell them during the day because our daughter was in a championship game. Dave didn't want to ruin that. And so he said, I got to go to Philly, but let's FaceTime tonight. I was like, oh, all right.
Here we go.
And, but they were young and, we got on FaceTime. We said, we're going to be going on we have a big adventure ahead of us. We're so lucky that we get to go live somewhere else and experience life, in a big city. And Dad's got a great opportunity and a great challenge ahead of him. And those are things that we want for you guys to see and hopefully experience someday. And kids were like, okay, where are we going? And our daughter said, are we going to Disney World? I was like, we're moving to Philadelphia. And our son kind of was like, okay, whatever. I mean, he was so young, and our daughter was like, what? Where's that? Okay, let's do it. And she was good to go. And then, we're moving to Toronto. Okay, we're moving to Toronto. Well, now they're 5th grade and 7th grade and had just moved from Philadelphia back to our lake house in the summer in Minnesota. And we said, okay, we're moving to Toronto. And they were like, oh, our son was immediately excited because of the hockey, the rich history. It was the Maple Leafs, and he's just sort of up for anything. He's sort of still like that in many cases. But our daughter was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's like, don't worry, Aves. We'll figure all of it out together. And here's where we're moving. And here's the things that, that we can do in this area of the world. And,
totally.
And she was really excited about the girls' hockey, the quality of girls' hockey in that area. And so it's all how you frame it, right? But things get real when they're real, and you have to acknowledge that. And I had to acknowledge that in Toronto. And it was a lot of hard work as a mom, and we spent a lot of time together. But she would tell you it's made her more resilient, and it has. And I would tell you it's made me more flexible, and it's been good. That's been a good thing for me too. So
Ooh, I love that. Yeah, it's really amazing just hearing, your perspective, and as similar to Wendy's, because for other people that are listening, it might give them ways that they can frame things to their children, because I don't know if I initially would have, thought to do that if I had kids of that age, because moves can be really hard. It's a lot of work, but to really just kind of switch the perspective so that your kids can feel, oh, okay, well, if my parents say this is exciting, then this is like, it's easier for them to see it from that lens. And if we're like, okay, or here we go again kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's really amazing that you guys are able to just shift that frame of thought like that. That's really cool.
Yeah. And it's not always perfect. Like when we moved to Philadelphia, we kind of said to each other, Dave and I, like, okay, we're making this move. Like, we're just gonna, wherever we are, we're going as a family. Well, now we found ourselves, our daughter made this team, it was a goal of hers, and she loves the school she's at for high school. I didn't ever plan on my 14-year-old leaving home.
Yeah.
But 15-year-old, 14-year-old, she was 14 at the time. But it was she wanted to do it. It was her goal. She she was really excited about it. And then this year we're part-time, I'm back and forth to Seattle because, this is a year where our son was kind of like, oh man, I just made like good buddies here. I
Mm-hmm.
really like playing hockey here. I love my team. Can we just like stay here this year and kind of scope some things out and kind of take things a little bit slower this time? And so that's worked for us. But going back to how you frame things for kids, it can sound like a lot of BS to be like positive all the time. But I think the more you really live that and look at it that way, it's true. And if you don't, like, if you just say it's a bunch of BS, like, oh, like if you in your head, you're like, I'm going to say this to my kids because they're young and they don't really get it, but they'll, if I say it, they'll think it. And in your head, you're going, it's just, just to get us through.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to work.
You have
You
to
kind
really
of have
believe
to,
it.
I think so. I think you really have to believe it. And you really have to like get up in the morning and go, okay, this is what, this is what I said, and this is what we're going to do. And I think the longer that you do it, the more it comes true.
What does community mean to you? And how has your time in the hockey world shaped who you are today?
Oh, community. Well, community to me means relationships and connection. And how are you impacting the people around you? And the biggest way I have found that I can feel like I'm part of a community or that I'm adding to a community is through the philanthropy that the teams have done and included us in. And I just, it's, I've met people through that. You get to do projects alongside, players' wives and other coaching staff wives. And it really builds a bond, but it also helps you become ingrained in the community you're living in, wherever that might be. And I think that it is so important and impactful because you're not, oftentimes you're not from the area you're living, and you really get to learn a lot about the people that live there, what the city stands for, what their history is, kind of the pulse of the city and where the need is and where the fun is. And I just think that it's been such a fulfilling thing to be a part of. That would be my favorite thing actually about being a part of the hockey community.
How has it kind of shaped how you see life, like being in this crazy hockey world?
So I think that the biggest thing is that it's given me, I know this is going to be maybe an unconventional answer, but it's given me a lot of compassion for people. Like a lot of times in pro sports, things look like shiny and happy and perfect. And, people have what they need for life. But there's a lot of struggle and there's a lot of like hard work and clawing your way up and weaving and bobbing your way through family life and moving and all of that. And I just feel like there's so much compassion that can be, so much more compassion that can be had for people in general, but also within the hockey community.
That's actually so true. I've never even really thought about it like that. But yeah, you're so right. I think
Yeah.
people from the outside, I've known that they have judgments on,
Mm-hmm.
athletes and their
Mm-hmm.
families and what do you have to
Mm-hmm.
complain about? You have this or that. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, no, it's actually really hard and you don't know what you're talking about. And you have to brush those
Yeah.
people off. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it
Yeah.
is true. You really don't know what people are going through. And yeah, it's important to have compassion for people for sure. I love that answer.
Yeah. Yeah. You just never know. You've got guys that are like huge NHL stars, but their partners might not want to be in the spotlight. And it's not their, comfort zone, and they add value in other ways to their communities or their team. But you got to have a little bit of compassion for stuff, someone like that, or, just as much as the person who is like injured ending injuries in October,
Mm-hmm.
so that comes
Yeah.
with its own set of problems. So
Right.
anyway, compassion,
Yeah,
that
I
would be
love
my big
that. Well,
thing.
thank you so much, Erin, for coming on the podcast. It was so nice talking to you.
It was so nice to talk to you and so nice to meet you virtually.